Welcome back, and thanks for joining me again. In the second part of the study of monotheism, we will dig deeper into the nation's relationship with the cultural practice of monotheism. We will begin looking at Native American religion and its mixture of practices. Let's go back over a few definitions to review what we have learned so far before we jump back into part 2. Monotheism meaning the doctrine or belief that there is only one God. Polytheistic meaning relating to or characterized by belief in or worship of more than one God. Henotheism is a form of theism focused on a single God. Non-theistic meaning not having or involving a belief in a god or gods. Pantheism is a doctrine which identifies God with the universe, or regards the universe as a manifestation of God. Lastly, atheism, meaning disbelief in the existence of God or gods. In Lakota spirituality, Wakan Tanka is the term for the sacred or the divine. This is usually translated as the Great Spirit and occasionally as Great Mystery. Wakan Tanka can be interpreted as the power or the sacredness that resides in everything, resembling some animistic and pantheistic beliefs. This term describes every creature and objects as Wakan, holy, or having aspects that are Wakan. The element Tanka corresponds to great or large. Before contact with European Christian missionaries, the Lakota used Wakan Tanka to refer to an organization or group of sacred entities whose ways were mysterious. Thus, the Great Mystery. Activist Russell Means also promoted the translation Great Mystery and the view that Lakota spirituality is not monotheistic. Native American religions may be monotheistic, polytheistic, henotheistic, animistic, or some combination thereof. Cherokee religion, for example, is monotheist as well as pantheist. The Great Spirit, called Wakan Tanka among the Sioux and Jich Manetam in Algonquian, is a conception of universal spiritual force or supreme being prevalent among some Native Americans and First Nation cultures. According to Lakota activist Russell Means, a better translation of Wakan Tanka is the Great Mystery. Some researchers have interpreted Aztec philosophy as fundamentally monotheistic or pantheistic, while the populace at large believed in a polytheistic pantheon. Aztec priests and nobles might have come to an interpretation of Teotul as a single universal force with many facets. There has been criticism to this idea, however, most notably that many assertions of this supposed monotheism might actually come from post-conquistador bias, imposing an antiquity pagan model onto the Aztec. Aztec philosophy was a school of philosophy that developed out of Aztec culture. Aztec cosmology was in some sense dualistic, but exhibited a less common form of it, known as dialectical monism. Aztec philosophy also included ethics and anesthetics. It has been asserted that the central question in Aztec philosophy was how people can find stability and balance in an ephemeral world. Aztec philosophy saw the concept of Omitioto as a unity that underlies the universe. Omitioto forms, shapes, and is all things. Even things in opposition, light and dark, life and death, were seen as expression of the same unity, Omitioto. The belief in a unity with dualistic expressions compares with similar dialectical monist ideas in both Western and Eastern philosophies. The orthodox faith system held by most dynasties of China since at least the Shang dynasty 1766 BC until the modern period centered on the worship of Shangdi, literally above sovereign, generally translated as high God or heaven as a supreme being standing above other gods. This faith system predated the development of Confucianism and Taoism, and the introduction of Buddhism and Christianity. It has some features of monotheism in that heaven is seen as an omnipotent entity, a non-corporeal force with a personality transcending the world. However, this faith system was not truly monotheistic, since other lesser gods and spirits, which varied with locality, were also worshipped along with Shangdi. Still, later variants such as Monotheism, 470 BC to 391 BC, approached true monotheism, teaching that the function of lesser gods and ancestral spirits is merely to carry out the will of Shangdi in Moses' will of heaven. I know heaven loves men dearly, not without reason. Heaven ordered the sun, the moon, and the stars to enlighten and guide them. Heaven ordained the 4 seasons, spring, autumn, winter, and summer, to regulate them. Heaven sent down snow, frost, rain, and dew to grow the 5 grains and flax and silk, that so the people could use and enjoy them. Heaven established the hills and rivers, ravines, and valleys, and arranged many things to minister to man's good or bring him evil. He appointed the dukes and lords to reward the virtuous and punish the wicked, and to gather metal and wood, birds and beasts, and to engage in cultivating the 5 grains and flax and silk to provide for the people's food and clothing. This has been so from antiquity to the present. Worship of Shangdi and heaven in ancient China includes the erection of shrines, the last and greatest being the Temple of Heaven in Beijing, and the offering of prayers. The ruler of China in every Chinese dynasty would perform annual sacrificial rituals to Shangdi, usually by slaughtering a completely healthy bull as sacrifice. Although its popularity gradually diminished after the advent of Taoism and Buddhism, among other religions, its concepts remained in use throughout the pre-modern period and have been incorporated in later religions in China, including terminology used by early Christians in China. Despite the rising of non-theistic and pantheistic spiritually contributed by Taoism and Buddhism, Shangdi was still praised up until the end of the Qing dynasty, as the last ruler of the Qing declared himself Son of Heaven. In the 19th century, in the Guangdong region, monotheism was well known and popular in Chinese folk religion. Now, let's take a look at classical Greece. Fictionalized portrait of Xenophon from the 17th century, engraving the surviving fragments of the poems of the classical Greek philosopher Xenophon of Colophon, suggests that he held views very similar to those of modern monotheists. His poems harshly criticize the traditional notion of anthropomorphic gods, commenting that if cattle and horses and lions had hands or could paint with their hands and create works such as men do, they also would depict the gods' shapes and make their bodies of such a sort as the form they themselves have. Instead, Xenophon declares that there is one God, greatest among gods and humans, like mortals neither in form nor in thought. Although Plato himself was a polytheist, in his writings, he often presents Socrates as speaking of the God in the singular form. He does, however, often speak of the gods in the plural form as well. The Euthyphro dilemma: is that which is wholly loved by the gods because it is holy, or is it holy because it is loved by the gods? Dualism. What is that? It is the division of something conceptually into 2 opposed or contrasted aspects, or the state of being so divided, the quality or condition of being 2. Some Indian philosophies believe that reality is fundamentally composed of 2 parts. It is most commonly referred as a philosophical view, which holds that mental phenomenon, at least in certain respects, that the mind and the body are distant and separable from one another. Dualism has a cosmological function, the explanation of the origin of the universe. On a cosmological level, dualistic opposition may also be manifest in the celestial world. In the late Zoroastrian opposition between the beneficent fixed stars and the planets, which are negative because they are alleged to proceed in the reverse sense, or else between the world of the heptad and the superior heaven of Agdad, the group of 8 divine beings or aeons, as in Gnosticism, where the monstrous figure of Leontocephalos, a human figure what a lion's head belted by a snake with astral signs, represented the power of astral destiny. The anthropological functions of dualism, dealing with human nature and destiny, are present in all those doctrines that consider the human individual to be a duality, or rather, an irreconcilable duality of opposed elements. Of particular importance is the opposition between masculine and feminine, in which their opposition involves a remarkable difference in level of being. The myths of Prometheus and Epimetheus in ancient Greece and Palaeon in Southeast Australia, or between the demiurge and the origin of sexuality. To close out our study on monotheism, we will now take a short look at the Abrahamic religions of Judaism. The existence of other gods is seldom explicitly denied and many times even acknowledged. The passionate importance given to the proclamation of Yahweh as the one God who counts for Israel, and the equally passionate rejection of other gods, however, make it truer to speak of the monotheism of Israel as in what became the Jewish affirmation of faith. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, one Lord. Deuteronomy 6:4. Even if one cannot speak of a strictly maintained monotheistic way of thinking, it is yet clear that faith in Yahweh is the foundation of life for the Israelite. Monotheism is not a matter of mathematics, of opting for the number 1 as against other numbers, but the conscious choice of persons committing themselves to one God rather than to any other ones, and putting their faith in that one God. Joshua proclaims, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15. In Israel, the ethical aspect was as important as the exclusiveness of their one God. The prophet stressed the ethical elements of an essentially exclusive God. The God of Israel was a jealous God who forbade his believers to worship other gods. In this respect, he differed from other gods in the ancient Middle Eastern religions, who, as a rule, did not put such exclusive obligation on their adherents. In later times, beginning in the 6th century BC and continuing into the early centuries of the Common Era, Jewish monotheism developed in the same direction as did Christianity, and also later Islam, under the influence of Greek philosophy, and became monotheistic in the strict sense of the word, affirming the one God for all persons everywhere. Thank you for taking your time to sit and listen to the brief study on monotheism. I pray you dig even deeper on your own personal spiritual journey in studying to show yourself worthy before the Most High, or in your own belief values. There is no doubt that the subject we covered is broad with fantastic topics and studies we could cover. Unfortunately, that could take a lifetime for all of us to video. Feel free to continue on beyond this time for your own personal growth.
Hello everyone. If you enjoyed the video you watched today, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for future videos. We appreciate your respect and positive feedback.